Can we start?
We start.
This is an interview with Swiss calligrapher Pascal Krieger. Pascal does many martial arts, Jūdō, Jōdō, Iaidō, just to name a few, but he's also a calligrapher, specialized in Japanese calligraphy. He's doing it for more than 50 years. I hope you'll enjoy it. First off, Pascal, thank you very much for doing this.
No problem.
I would like to start at the beginning, before you even touch your brush. Where did you grow up?
I was born in 1945 near Lausanne and near the lake of Geneva. Yeah, but the life was a little bit more complicated for me. At 4 years old, I had an uncle from the west part of Switzerland who came to my father, who had 5 other children, and he told him that, if he could take one, as he didn't have anyone, it would be maybe better for my father. And so they put me in the car of my uncle, and I went away for 4 years. I didn't see my parents anymore, neither my brother and my sisters. And I was in the western part of Switzerland without any connection with my parents anymore for 4 years.
For 4 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I was 8, I came back to my parents, who were living in Clarens, which is also near Lausanne. And I had a very heavy accent of the western Switzerland, and my brother just felt like I was a stranger. So that was a little bit difficult. And at that time there was a missionary from Institut La Vigerie in Algeria, and he came and told my parents, if you want, I take one of your children, I can take it to the seminar in Saint Maurice. And I said okay. And at 10 years old, I went to this White Father seminars in Saint Maurice, and I stayed there for 5 years. Yeah. So this is the beginning of my life. When I came back home, I started the study of typography in Montreux, and that was 4 years study, and then I became a typographer.
What kind of job did you do?
So I was we call that in French compositeur typographe, which is typographer compositor. So you are, for 9 hours a day, you are standing in front of a very big, we call that casse, with 90 small areas where you have small letter, and for all day you are taking these like matches. Here, go like this, like this, and then when you finish your line, you put the line here, and then you start again, and that's for 9 hours a day.
I see. For how long did you do this kind of job?
For 4 years during my apprenticeship, and then as a worker for 2 more years. Yeah.
I see. And the whole Japanese thing started with Judō, right?
Then in 1963, I had a friend in the printing shop where I was working, who told me, "Hey, I'm doing Judō, why don't you come?" And I arrived at the dojo, and yeah, I was very impressed, and I started Judō in 1963. And then in 1966, I had a girlfriend who went to Geneva, and I followed her. And I arrived in Geneva, and I chose dōjō just by chance, like this. That was the Shung Dō Kwan, which was created by a Korean. That's why we say Shung Dō Kwan and not Sudō Kwan. In that dojo, I saw many other arts, but I just continued Judō about 4 times a week, and I liked it very much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No. I would like to know what kind of person was Pascal 60 years ago, before Japan.
No, I was very dedicated to my job. I liked my job very much. I had many friends, and I was doing Judō about 4 times a week. And one day I thought maybe I should go away somewhere. And I had a friend, a German friend, who was a typographer too, and he told me maybe we could go to Japan. Oh, that would be nice. Let's go by ship. Mm-hmm. So we went to Germany, in Hamburg, to try to find a boat that go to Japan, but couldn't find one because we had to work on the boat. And I said, okay, I can work on the boat, yes, but when we arrived in Japan, you must come back with the boat because you have to continue your job. So I said, no, I cannot do that because I'd like to stay there. So we said, okay, with my friend, I was there for about 4 months in Hamburg, and that's where I could speak German pretty well at that time. Mm-hmm. And then we say, okay, let's go to Marseille, southern France, and let's try to find a boat there. And when arrived in Marseille, we found a boat that was called Cambodia, and it was its last trip to Japan, a full trip to Japan. And we say, okay, let's do it. And we got on the boat, and at that time the Suez Canal was closed because of the war, so we had to go all around Africa, and with a stop in Dakar, then in Durban. In those days, Durban was in South Africa, apartheid, where the life was not easy. And I remember when I was in Durban, we had 2 days stop there, and I had a Japanese girlfriend with me, and she didn't speak English well, so she said, I would like to buy some films for my camera. And I said, okay, I come with you. And I entered the film shop, and the guy told me, you can come in, but she stays outside. I say, why? She wants to buy something. He said, no, she stays outside, she's not white. I say, okay. And then I bought the film, and then we went out, and I said, I'm sorry, but you are not accepted in this country because you are not white. I'm sorry. And she said, now I'd like to go to toilet. And I said, well, let's go. And we found public toilet, but it was written whites only. So I said, I'm sorry, you cannot go there. I said, yeah, but I need. And I said, okay, I took my coat and I went like this, and she went in the grass behind, and she did what she had to do. So I had to hide her a little bit. So that's the experience I had in South Africa. Then we went up north up to Mombasa. That was 2 days stop there. Then we crossed the ocean and we arrived in Mumbai. That was terrible in those times. I remember at night stepping over a dead body in the street. Then we went to Ceylon. In those days it was Ceylon, it was not Sri Lanka. And that was 2 days there too. And then we went to Singapore, then Bangkok, then Hong Kong, then Kobe, and we arrived in
Yokohama?
Yokohama.
Now it's much easier.
Now it's much easier. Now is it more? Is it nicer? I don't know, but it's much easier now, of course. I remember it as one of the best part of my life. It was wonderful. And I was spending most of my days in front of the boat, and I was just looking at the sea, going like this. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Did you know anything about Japanese calligraphy before you went to Japan?
Not at all.
What was your plan to do in Japan?
I had no plan at all. I had no money.
Yeah.
And for me it was just an adventure. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what... In fact, with my German friend, we took a taxi from Yokohama thinking that Tokyo was very close, but it was not. And we spent a lot of money in this taxi. And we arrived at the Kodokan. And that's where we lived for quite a few months.
You lived in Kodokan?
In Kodokan. There were rooms there, and we could sleep there. Yeah. And as I had no money at all, I started to go to ask people in the trade. We took the Yamanote-sen, going around Tokyo for hours and hours, and I was asking people if they wanted to learn French. And I found one or two ladies who said, okay, I would like to learn French. Yes, please come to my house once a week, and then I will give you food in exchange of 1 hour course. And that's how I could eat for quite a while. Okay. And was training every day. Every day, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. Okay. So it was 4 hours a day training, and the rest of the time I was trying to find job, and I was trying to find occupation that could give me some money. Yeah. It was a very hard time, but very interesting. At that time, foreigners were not so much appreciated by Japanese, because they had just lost Olympic Games. Yeah. And then all the Japanese were very angry at foreigners. Yep. And I paid this with my arm, that I cannot go more than that. And he took an arm bar, and when I did this to stop, he went crack. Nice. Just to end it like this. Yeah. And then I had a problem with my arm since then. Yeah.
Did you feel any kind of racism?
Not really. Not racism. I don't think this is the right word.
I think another word could be xenophobia.
Yeah,
didn't feel
a little bit. Let's say they were not accustomed to foreigners, and they looked at you like somebody who was very strange. But I had a very good relationship with Japanese from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in those days, there were very, very few foreigners.
Yeah.
In '69 in Japan, you could walk through Tokyo for hours and hours without meeting any foreigners at all.
Mm-hmm. What about in Kodokan, in dojo?
In Kodokan, we were maybe 8 or 9 foreigners. Yeah.
And I think you met Don Dreger over there, right?
Yes, I met him in Kodokan, and he was a very tall American, very nice, and he saw me one day drawing on a paper, and he came to me and he said, "Hey, you draw very well. I'm writing a book. Could you help me and do some drawings for me?" And this is the book I'm talking about. And I said, "Yeah, why not? Okay." And we started to have a very friendly relationship. In Kodokan, he was often taking me and teaching me some newaza. I was very, very good in newaza, and of course in tachiwaza too. And one day he told me, "Pascal, I think you should do something else than judo in Japan. If you stay there for a few years, it would be a shame that you don't do some other arts. Judo you can do in France, Switzerland. There are some people who are as good as Japanese in this field, but I'd like to introduce you to other people." And I said, "Okay, sensei, I'll follow you." And he took me to Rembukan dojo, where they were doing Jo. And I met Shimizu Takagi sensei there and Kuroda Ichitaro sensei. And they were very kind with me. And I said, "Okay, I agree to start Jo." And that was end of '69. And then I started Jo, and when I was working with training with Kuroda sensei, he told me, "I'm also a EI teacher. What would you like? Would you like to try EI?" I said, "Okay, why not?" And then with Kamidoda Tsunemori sensei, I went to do some EI. He gave me a real sword first, a real cutting sword, for my first try, and I cut myself several times. And then Kuroda sensei told me, he was a policeman, and he told me, "I'm doing EI on the top of a building. Come twice a week, do EI with me. And we start tomorrow morning." Okay, and I went there, I did some EI, and then he said, "Okay, I'll be your EI teacher, but only if you do calligraphy. So you do EI and calligraphy." And from then on, 3 times a week, I did EI and calligraphy with Kuroda sensei, plus 2 times a week I went to the Jōdō lesson, and I continued my judo training 4 hours a day in Kodokan.
So now you got your plan, so you are full-time, like dedicated to martial arts. And
plus teaching French to survive. Yeah. If I had not known him, I wouldn't have done Iaidō and calligraphy at all.
I see.
Yeah.
Was he same age like you? Or
No,
older?
no. He was older. He was a colonel in the Korean War, and so when I met him, he was about 50, or he had about 25 years more than me.
So he was like an older brother or father, maybe.
Yeah,
or teacher.
more a father than a brother. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the reason why Korea-sensei insists that you do calligraphy as well?
Because all his students were doing calligraphy. All his EI students were doing calligraphy. Yeah.
How did you learn calligraphy with Kuroda-sensei?
So I went after the training, EI training. I went to his home, and I was sitting in front of him, and he was teaching me the first strokes of calligraphy, and I had to work on this at home. And the next time I went to his home, I was showing him my tries. He was correcting, etc., etc. So Drager Sensei told me that he wanted to publish a monthly, what do you call? Magazine on martial art, and he called it Martial Arts International. But he told me, I have friends in Chicago, in USA, that have a room where you have all the what you call you can type and make the layout and print, but
like a graphic design studio or something.
Yeah, but in those days was really very old stuff. Yeah. And he told me, "What do you think? You could go to Chicago?" And I said, "Well, why not?" Yeah, I was very glad to help him. And I received a letter from my mother, who told me that my father was in very bad shape. And in '71, I decided to go back to Switzerland to see my father. Happily, I arrived 2 days before he died, and I could see him going.
Say goodbye.
Yeah, say goodbye. And then I started to teach Jō in '71 in Shung Dō Kwan. I started to teach Jō and Iai. And after the training, I said, okay, people who are interested, you can also come to a calligraphy session if you want. And I told Drager Sensei, I told him that, well, I was at home because of my father, and I would go to Chicago as soon as he wanted. And he told me, okay, try to be there at the end of the year. And so I spent about 7 months in Geneva teaching Jō, Iai, and calligraphy. And then I went to Chicago. There I arrived at that shop where they were doing printing, and I started to lay out, and to lay out. It was a full job from morning to night, and I had to print. I never had printed before. I was just compositor. I was not printer. And I had to learn that alone and print the magazine. And those are the three first magazine. So that was a full-time job, and happily I started to learn English really very hard every day, because I was writing and doing drawings
and layout.
Okay. but my English was not good yet. I remember a guy from Hungary who was in America for quite a few years. He took me to a restaurant and he was talking with me, and at one time he said, "You can say that again." And I repeated what I just said. And he started to laugh and said, "Oh, you can say that again." And I did it a third time, and the whole people around us were laughing, and I still didn't understand why. Why do they laugh? And then I understood that "you can say that again" means, oh, I'm very surprised. Yeah. So I studied English very hard, and I was working about 9-10 hours a day for the printing of this magazine. And then Drager Sensei told me that it was too expensive, and there was a possibility of doing this in Hong Kong. "Do you want to go to Hong Kong?" I said, "Okay, if you want me to go to Hong Kong, I go to Hong Kong." So in '74, I went to Hong Kong to start working on this again. But it was just the year where there was the oil shock, and all the prices were going up.
Yeah.
And at one time, Drager Sensei told me, "Listen, I had to give up. We cannot go, it's too expensive." So I was in Hong Kong for about 3-4 months. And then I said, "Okay, well, I cannot go back to Europe because I don't have enough money. But Japan is closer." So I went back to Japan, and I stayed 4 more years.
And you continue with calligraphy, EI?
Then, of course, I met all my teachers again, and I continued the same thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Judō, Jōdō, Iaidō, and Shodō.
May I ask you, why did you decide to return to Geneva after 6 years?
Yeah, I must say I got married in Japan with a Japanese woman, and I had my first son there, Isamu. And then after a while I said, "Okay, I would like to show my kid to my mother and my brother and sisters." Yeah.
By plane, I hope, at the time, no?
Yes.
It was shipped
Yes, by
again,
plane.
though, by plane.
By
Yeah,
plane.
I
By
see.
plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the first time I went back to Switzerland for my father's death, I went with the Trans-Siberian, and I took the train from Vladivostok to I don't even Poland, Paris. I think Paris. Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah.
Was it safe to take a train? Or
It was not safe, but well, it was a very good experience. Russian at that time were pretty hard with foreigners. Yeah.
yeah.
But I found when I came back to Switzerland, I continued to work in a printing shop, and gradually those letters became different. We were using films and then paper, and then the computer arrived after that. Yeah.
I see.
And I found a very good job in the International Organization for Standardization,
ISO.
which is ISO, and I found a very good job there, and I was drawing and laying out with a computer this time the magazines for the ISO. And that was a very interesting job, and I did it for 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Using InDesign and Photoshop and this kind of programs?
InDesign mostly, yeah.
I see.
And Photoshop, yeah.
After you returned to Geneva, did you think to turn everything into a business? Maybe a business is kind of a dirty word, but what I mean is to do all martial arts and calligraphy for a living. Do you think about it? No.
No, I always wanted to work because I didn't want money to interfere with my training. Of course, when I was giving course, I was paid very little, but and still now I'm paid very little. But I never mixed Budō and money.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, people I look up to, like you or Bernard Callot, all of you are saying don't turn your hobby into a business. Don't do martial arts or calligraphy for a living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? It's because, well, many Japanese teachers do that.
Yeah, I know, and I also know that
what's the catch? Why not to do that?
I don't know. It's a feeling. It's a feeling. I don't like to sell. I don't like to sell my art. My art.
I see.
I don't like to sell my art.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to sell my heart either. Like now, when I have a gashku somewhere, I usually take about 40, 50 calligraphies I've done, and Maria Rosa is putting them against the wall, and people come and they say, "Oh, I like this one," and Maria Rosa, okay, you put something in this bag. If you have no money, it can be 10 francs, 10 euros. If you have more, it can be 20, it can be 30. You do as you want. And for me, this is enough to pay for the paper and a little bit of my time. Yeah. But I never, I usually don't sell calligraphy like a businessman. If somebody asks me for one calligraphy and tells me how much, then I give a price and it's okay. But usually I like people to choose when they want, how they want. Yeah. So since I came back to Switzerland, I continued to send my tries to Kuroda Sensei, and he was correcting them and sending me back the tries with new models, and at least once a month. And of course I was paying for it, so for the letters and for the paper, and
yep.
But very little. It was not much. Yeah. And I already started in 71, but I started really more seriously to teach calligraphy in 76. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I had a course every month, and people were coming, and I was trying to form them. Yeah.
Did you have any Japanese students?
I had...
or Chinese?
Yeah, Chinese and Japanese students at 3 different occasions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They liked it very much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the whole models from Kuroda Sensei used to be about Budō, I assume, because about Bumbu.
Yeah, usually about Budō, but also about Yeah, but other things, yeah, no problem.
Nice.
Yeah. And I started to make a program for learning calligraphy, and it was 5 years to get the Shodan. So first year was katakana, second year was hiragana, third year was the origin of hiragana, and always I had some theme for the kanji that was taken mostly from Budō. Yeah.
And also most of your students are doing martial arts.
Yeah, most of my students were doing that. No more now, but at that time, yeah, most of my students were doing some martial arts.
Can I ask you how often did you do calligraphy in Japan after your return, and how often you do calligraphy right now? You're talking with Kurada Sensei, it was a few times a week,
Yeah,
plus homework.
yeah.
And after you returned to Geneva, did you do calligraphy once a week or twice a week or something like that?
I think about every day, maybe 1 hour.
Yeah.
More now, it's because I have many students, so I receive from post, especially with the pandemic situation, I receive from post, I don't know, about 50 envelopes a month, and I have to correct them and put new models in it and send them.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a job that takes quite a few hours a day.
I think that there are two extremes of people. Some people like to do everything, but actually they do nothing deep. And another extreme could be to do only one thing. But usually those people don't have anything else. They don't have friends, families, kids, nothing. You've got your life, you've got 5 kids, I think.
Yeah.
You got your hobby, you playing guitar, you do a few martial arts. You used to work as a graphic designer for 30 years. And you do martial arts and calligraphy on a very high level. But you do many of them. Why you didn't choose only one?
The main reason is that I found a tie between all these arts. And doing only one would make me sad. Because in Judō you have this contact, you have this way of using your body and your hara, etc., etc. You have the same in sword, you have the same in Jō, and I found out that there is the same thing in calligraphy too. You are using your body, your breathing, the same way. You come here and Jō. So gradually I found many similarities between what I was doing in Budō and what I was doing in calligraphy. So I just didn't want to concentrate on one.
I see.
I wanted to continue to do all with the same spirit. And for me that was very, very important. And I found, maybe I was taught that, but I don't remember, I found ways of doing, like in the kaisho, in the script style, you are really doing things very intellectually. Script. So for me it was from brain. And then when I started to concentrate more on gyosho, I found this kukan hitsui, means continuing the stroke in the white space, in the empty space, continuing the stroke in the empty space. And I found that was more what you call, it was no more cerebral, it was more with the heart, with the feeling, with the what you call sentiments, feeling, yeah. And then I started to study this, and I found, yeah, feeling in it. Mm-hmm. No more boom, 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 but just this. And then when I started Sōshō, herb style, I found that it became more from my belly, from my seika tandem. And I was very impressed one day when I saw somebody writing. And then when he signed his letter, he changed his position and signed like this. The difference of style and rhythm was so strong that I said, oh, that is Sōshō. Sōshō, you really go. Gyōshō, you go. Kaishō, you go. And I found these three styles very interesting, and I took them for the practice of Jō, and Iai, and Kenjutsu, and Judō also. So gradually in Jō I was teaching for the Kihon, for the beginners, I was teaching Kaishō Jōdō. So 1, 2, 3. And after a few months of practice, I say, okay, now you do 1, 2. And after a few more months, I say, okay, now you do Sōshō. And I found so many similarities between Budō and Shodō that really to just concentrate on one, it would be, for me, it would be really bad. Yeah. I continue to have all this together. And I progress in all these fields gradually, years after years. Yeah.
I got one question about own style, because maybe a goal of any calligrapher, maybe it's a dream of any calligrapher, is to have own style.
Sure, sure.
Do you have own style?
I think you cannot avoid that. You have your own style, but I'm very what do you call? I like Kaishō very much because I think it's my typograph past. Mm-hmm. I like the construction of the kanji very much. Like when there is a line like this, for me there is more weight here than here. That's why it's like this. So the center line here is not going to be in the center. It's going to be a little bit on this. That's why it's like this. Mm-hmm. So if I am like this, it's flat. If I am like this, it will. So that's why I would say the vertical stroke should be a little bit more on the right. So this kind of yeah, I think it's my typograph past that interests me in this. Like if you have a square, it's getting a little bit up here and then here. And for me, it's like a window that I am looking at from here. And a window.
So it's not a flat, it's in space.
Yeah. So I'm looking from here. So the middle is going to be here, and then here. And this part is going to be thicker because it's closer to my eyes, and this is thinner, and this in the middle. And so these are the things I like very much in Kaisho. So I like the construction of the kanji very well. And then about calligraphy, I would say my preferred style is gyosho. I like the gyosho very much. Sosho, of course I like it very much, but I am not very good at it. I have to memorize the kanji perfectly before I can go like this. But usually you go and then and so you cannot do social like this. You have, and this was also a discovery for me. It was that first you have to memorize the kanji and then you have to practice it. Usually people think you practice, and while you practice, gradually you memorize. And I think this is not good. Because when you practice with mistakes, the mistakes will have roots in you. Mm-hmm. You will not be able to get rid of these mistakes because you have repeated them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
Like to get bad habit.
Yeah. So I think first it's very important to memorize the form, and when it is memorized, you don't have to do this, look at the model like this. You memorize it, and then you can put your heart and your feeling in it. So when you get, now I know, etc. Because I memorized the form, so I can now concentrate on my feeling of the stroke. But most of the people, they do this, and I still do that sometimes. They go like this, and like this, and like this. So there is no continuity in the work. So I think memorizing first and doing later is the right way.
Do you think that a non-Japanese student of Japanese calligraphy needs to learn Japanese?
That's a good question. Yeah, that is something I always hesitate a little. I ask my student to learn katakana and hiragana. I want them to know these syllables by heart. But for the kanji, I let them free. If they want to remember them, if they want just to practice a little bit and then forget about it, it's okay. So I am not teaching Japanese, but at the same time, when you brush a kanji and you don't know the meaning of it or the pronunciation of it, well, there is something a little bit funny. I don't like it so much. So I like, and to encourage my student to learn a little bit of Japanese, I would say when you write like this, 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 this. Okay, so I explained to my student that this kanji was created maybe 4,000 years ago. And to create a kanji talking about the bird, it's okay. It comes from the form, the shape of the bird. It's an Australian bird with this, then this, the eye, and then here, and then this. And you can see the tie between these. But in this, benevolence, the radical human and the number 2. And gradually you see, oh, 2 people living together, if they are not benevolent, there is only one left after a while. And so I like to teach these to my students because it's the meaning of the kanji that is so beautiful. And 4,000 years ago, somebody was creating kanji, and for the birds there was no problem. But now benevolence. How can we draw benevolence? How can we draw love? How can we draw peace? How can you draw peace? And again, gradually you come to this, okay, cereal. And mouth. Cereal and mouth. Put cereal in the mouth of your people and they will not make war to you. Okay, good. So these, I think if you don't teach this, it's a shame because it's very interesting. So I'm not teaching Japanese to my students, but I ask them to learn a little bit of the language.
I see.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
So you like very much the philosophy part of kanji?
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist in Western calligraphy because it's alphabet A, B, C, D.
It's true.
Nothing like that.
But what is interesting in Western calligraphy is that the way of writing is very close to calligraphy. I'm always interested in trying to find the ties between all what I am doing. I don't want to separate. I do now this. Now I do this. I want to have everything together and try to find the ties. And gradually I found in our system of writing, you are moving your body, you are exhaling, and gradually you say, hey, that's like calligraphy. And I couldn't do that like this. I need my body and I found many similarities between calligraphy and the Shodō and the writing. Yeah.
How would you translate word Shodō?
The way of writing. And for me, the way A way is not a style, it is much deeper than that. There is the spirit, the heart, Seikatandan, you have all this in the way. You do the same as in Budō again. The Do of Budō, the Do of Shodō is the same Do. It's a way which is very rich, very long to learn, and maybe without end. I don't think the perfection is in this world. But to go towards the perfection is what you have to do. To reach the perfection, I don't believe in it. I don't like it, because if one day I say, oh, I'm perfect now. Okay, so I put everything out and I do something else. For me it would be, I wouldn't understand that. For me a way is going as far as possible. Then you die, but as far as possible. For me there is no end. And for me this is very important. So which means that I can continue. And now I can see I'm getting old, my mind is not always good, and my arm is not so good, I have arthrosis and everything. But I have to find I have to find a way of continuing my research, and I have to continue. And for me, the day I don't have to continue is going to be a very sad day. So for me, dying the brush in the hand would be a nice way of dying.
There's one more word, and it's shuji. Shuji and Shodō.
Yes.
What do you think was the difference between shuji and Shodō? Because I think even for Japanese, it's the same thing.
Yes. I think shuji is learning how to write. Shōdō is going much further than that. Yeah. Is finding in the way of writing, it's finding something much deeper. Shuji is, well, we have to learn, like in our culture, we have to learn how to write a letter. And that for me is shuji. Shu is learning, ji is learning the letter. And then to learn what is in the letter, that's more Shōdō, gradually.
Do you have any tips for non-Japanese students who would like to study Japanese calligraphy?
I am deeply convinced that it's good to teach foreigners is the origin of the kanji. It's very, very interesting. We have just letter, it's just
alphabet.
Like this alphabet. But they have a story in their kanji that is so interesting, and that's why I'm encouraging people who study calligraphy with me to study a little bit of Japanese. Not to talk, but
etymology of the kanji.
Etymology of the kanji. For me this is very important. One of my first model of Kuroda Sensei was Tenteki Haseki. Even a drop of water can, what do you call that?
Make a hole.
Make a hole in the hardest stone. Now you see a drop of water on a stone, it goes nothing. You come 1 year later, and there's a hole. But so it means continue. Another one that I like very much is My Guy Cho Konao. Make of each obstacles a springboard. So instead of going, big problem again, so make of this problem a springboard to go further. So these are very interesting saying. For me, this is very important as a Budoka. Sekai dōjō. So if you are in the dōjō and you are bowing, and then bow to the others, and be careful when you put your sword on the right. The cutting edge should not be to the showman; it should be here. Now the showman is here. Kamisa or joseki, shimoseki, shimoza, to know where I am. When I bow to the kamisa. The teachers should be on the joseki. The beginners should be on the shimoseki. All the others are in the shimoza. So you have many laws in a dojo that are, I think, very interesting. And then you leave the dojo and you go and you drink and you touch the girl, etc., etc. So for me, gradually, it will not be easy and it will not come naturally and very soon, but I think gradually you have to try to behave yourself outside the dojo as you behave in the dojo. Of course not with this thing, but I mean spiritually you have to keep to be equal in the dojo and outside, and not have a life in the dojo and then completely different life outside. That's not easy. I'm the first one to not to be very good at that. And as an EI teacher, I think this is very important. The sword that kills and the sword that gives life. We have to make this trip here. The beginners usually, when you ask him, you show him a technique of sword, he feels my enemy is here and I cut, and then I cut like this, and he feels really like this. And gradually this should change into something like that.
Pascal Sensei, arigatou gozaimashita.
Do itashimashite.
Merci beaucoup.
Mais de rien, de rien. J'ai eu beaucoup de plaisir à avoir cette conversation avec toi.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Thank you for listening.